Thanks, guys. Okay, next is Nick Diakopoulos, who's been a fellow with us for the year. Did a great report that I highly recommend looking up on our website on algorithmic reporting. And Nick is a computer scientist, now journalist, I think officially, since he just got hired at Maryland Journalism School. So Nick, want to come tell us about algorithms?
Thanks, Taylor. Let me just, are we all on the same slide deck here? No, I probably have to switch, switch slides. Oh, the May 30th? I think PowerPoint just crashed. Yeah, okay. Technology. So thank you for the introduction, Taylor. Yes, I'm Nick Diakopoulos, PowerPoint master here. I wanted to do a little bit of a reprise from a report that the Tau Center published in February of some research that I've been thinking about on algorithmic accountability reporting and thinking about computer science and journalism and how to integrate the notion of the investigation of algorithms into journalism. So my background is computer science, though I'm definitely stepping into this world of journalism now, and as Taylor mentioned, I'll be joining the University of Maryland this fall. So a while back, Lawrence Lessig actually had this brilliant quote that he wrote that he said, we should interrogate the architecture of cyberspace as we interrogate the code of Congress. And this was sort of prescient 14 years ago when he was really driving at this idea that the architecture of systems and the code and algorithms that run those systems can be a powerful influence on our liberty. And that they are deserving of scrutiny by society and perhaps also by journalists. So let me give you a brief example of algorithmic power. So last fall, the New York Times published a very nice investigation piece about a number of sites that were starting to go out and aggregate mugshot photos online. So mugshot photos are public record. They're posted on police websites. You can go out and grab them, download them, and these sites are putting them in a database and then search engine optimizing, so SEOing these photos so that if I type your name in the Google search engine and you have a mugshot photo, your photo would pop up as perhaps the top result. Now, having a mugshot online might be a little embarrassing. It might affect your ability to develop relationships or find employment and so on. And so what these sites were doing was they were essentially extorting money from people to remove their mugshot photos from those rankings. So, as a society, we may not love that this kind of activity is going on, and so there's a few different levers on behavior that we can use. We can go the legal route, and some states have started to institute new laws that curtail the ability of these kinds of mugshot sites to use mugshot photos, particularly for people who weren't convicted. We can go the money route. We can try and we choke off these sites by using levers like Visa or MasterCard to deny payments so that they can't actually collect money from these people. Or, in fact, what ended up happening was that Google employed an algorithmic strategy to exert algorithmic power over this situation. And so what they did was, by reweighting the ranking algorithm in search, now when I search your name on Google, even if you have a mugshot photo, it wouldn't be in the top 10, maybe it would be down past 50 or 100. It would be further on down the ranking, and we know that most people only look at the first couple of pages of search results. So this vastly mitigates the problem of people being exposed and being extorted for that. So, this isn't just, search engines. This is happening all throughout online media. Amazon recommendations, news commenting systems, review systems like Yelp. I've been getting very interested in things like these sharing platforms like Airbnb and Uber and the way that they use algorithms to optimize those markets and what those optimizations mean for the people using those platforms. This little tag cloud shows a number of different examples of where I found algorithms being used in business and government, and you can see, things, everything from welfare management to advertising systems, predictive policing, credit scores, and on and on and on. Algorithms are really, really becoming totally pervasive in society, including in areas of romance. So there was a brilliant cartoon in the New Yorker earlier this year. You have a sort of irritated looking woman looking over at this guy scowling at her, and she says, "I'd like to meet the algorithm that thought we'd be a good match." And I think this cartoon actually puts its finger on a very important problem, which is that these algorithms aren't accountable to us. We don't really know how they're working, but we might wonder, we wonder, why did this algorithm think that we would be a good match? So it's this issue of algorithmic obfuscation. Algorithms are very opaque. There's a very real technical complexity that acts as a barrier to people sort of understanding what's going on with the algorithm. And they're often conceived of as black boxes, so sealed off from the outside world, sort of doing their magic inside, and making it very difficult for us to understand what's going on. So this sort of motivated a number of research questions, which my research project this year addressed. Things like, how can we characterize the bias or power of an algorithm? When might algorithms be making mistakes, or when might they be wronging us? Could they be discriminating against certain populations, for instance? And of course, given the traditional role of journalists as the fourth estate, how might journalists play into holding algorithmic power to account in the same way that they hold government or corporate power to account? So how might we actually go about doing such investigations of algorithms to hold them accountable for how they're exerting power over us? One approach might be to start looking at methods of reverse engineering algorithms. So given that we have a black box, we can actually start looking at the inputs and outputs of that black box. So there's on the input side, we can start poking that algorithm in a number of different ways and looking at how the algorithm responds to each of those pokes. And by correlating those two things, we can start to come to some understanding of what might be occurring within that box. We can start to develop a theory. We can start to build a story about what might be happening in that black box. So there's a very nice example of this from the media from late 2012, where the Wall Street Journal actually was doing some reverse engineering analysis and looking at price discrimination. And in particular, what they were looking at, the black box they were examining were online e-commerce sites, so Staples in this example. And on the input side of the black box, they were varying the geography of the person visiting the site as well as the user profile, so the cookie profile of who was visiting the site. And then on the output side, they were looking at the prices that were displayed on the site. And so if you do this enough different times and you're thoughtful about how you're sampling that black box, you can start to build a story of what's going on. So here's a map of what they found. So dark green is higher prices, dark gray is lower prices. This is a map of Iowa. And you can see that in sort of urban areas, you're finding lower prices, and in some of the more rural counties, you're finding higher prices. If you zoom in a little bit more, you can and overlay the locations of Staples as well as competitors. You see that in areas where Staples has a competitor, they're giving the lowest price, whereas in zip codes where they don't have a competitor, so those are the red dots, they're surrounded by this dark green, so higher prices. So, nothing terribly surprising there, right? I mean, they're competing on price. Competition drives down price. But it does sort of raise this question of, wasn't the internet supposed to equalize things for us? There's certainly a potential there to offer everyone the same price, but in reality what's happening is that you're finding the more rural, more socioeconomically challenged counties paying higher prices for things. So what other stories might we find from algorithms? We might think about how an algorithm is discriminating against someone, is providing a loan to someone. Is it being unfair in some way that we think is important to remediate in society? Is it making a mistake that denies a service? So some algorithms are now being used for social service management, welfare management. We want to make sure that that if there is an error in an algorithm that has a consequential decision for someone in that situation, that we sort of have some way of assessing that. Algorithms certainly can censor information. China uses algorithms for doing this. A number of regimes use algorithms for doing censorship. There's also censorship on almost every news site that uses software for moderating comments, for instance. We might think about how algorithms break laws or social norms. So I've done some work on reverse engineering Google auto-completion. So this is the thing where you start typing and it gives you a list of, do you want to search for this instead? And how that relates to things like defamation. So if I start typing your name and it says, so-and-so is a prostitute, or so-and-so is a thief. In the US, you can't sue Google for that. In some other countries, you can. And so this brings up the interesting question of, at what point do we start thinking of algorithms as entities that can actually defame someone else, and under what conditions can we hold those algorithms accountable? We might also look for stories where algorithms are making false predictions. So the algorithm predicted that the hurricane was going to come in 100 miles north of where it did. How did that affect those communities that were hit as a result of that? So if there's one thing that I learned from writing this report, it's that there's tons of work to do in this space. There's lots of open questions. I hope some of you will talk to me afterwards about where this is all heading. Just a few sort of high-level ideas here of what's coming next. Thinking about how to teach journalists to do this kind of reporting. It's not just about programming. It's also about being able to ask the right questions of that black box. It's about computational thinking. It's about being able to abstract and model. It's about critical thinking in the investigation of algorithms. There are some fascinating legal issues here. I would love to collaborate with legal scholars on this. Questions about the DMCA and the CFAA and the legitimacy for journalists to be able to do these kinds of investigations. There's fascinating questions about algorithms in the newsroom. So now that bots and other sort of automated news technologies that we've heard mentioned here and which will be discussed further in a panel later, now that these are becoming more commonplace in newsrooms, how do we figure out the best ways to communicate to the public that we're using these things? Does the public editor of the future also need to be an algorithmic ombudsman to be explaining how we're using these algorithms in the process of providing evidence for any sort of story that we're working on? And then finally, what might a transparency policy look like for algorithms to, make that black box more of a white box, something that's a little bit transparent, so that we can see into it and understand a little bit about the criteria, the data that may be factoring into it, and maybe make it a little bit more palatable to us and a little bit more trustworthy to us. So with that, I guess we're not taking questions, but if you're interested in contacting me, my contact information is there. Also, if you want to find the report, it's online, or we have printouts, I believe, at the back of the room. So thank you.